The Golden Age of Psychopathy. Mass Predation of an Abulic Modern Society. Part 1. Introduction to a Psychopathic Golden Age. Instilled within every naturally evolving human being is a seed of divine potential. It is only through personal acts of individual will that each seed can be germinated and fully nourished to bear the fruits of higher, holistic consciousness. The goal of a predatory ruling class has long been to discourage the self-discovery of this inner potential by tactfully crafting the environment of conflict and distraction that we call modern civilization. These predatory rulers now enjoy the height of their dark prosperity, for a holistic assessment of modern civilization reveals that ignorance and naivety abound in a climate maximized for social predation. A near full-spectrum dominance has now been asserted over an abulic or weak-willed humanity and unchallenged proliferation of psychopathic urges. The spiritual and indeed hereditary disease of human consciousness, known as primary psychopathy, is typified by a total absence of empathy or remorse for often malicious and manipulative behavior. Although this rare genetic condition can be found within all strata of society, psychopathy proves to be endemic among the highest-ranking members of the ruling class, as an evaluation of their collective behavior indeed epitomizes acutely psychopathic tendencies. History clearly reveals the psychopathic whims of a predatory rulership to have long haunted mankind in an ancient and ever-fluctuating struggle, eventually delivering an amnesiac modern man into the welcoming arms of the brave new world we suffer today. The dynamic state of collective human consciousness is dependent in part upon the spiraling energies of higher cosmic time, for just as man sleeps in the darkness of each night, so too do the higher faculties of his consciousness ebb and flow between states of activation and dormancy, as human awareness is naturally synchronized to the slower rhythms of the ages. It is in such shadowed times of deep prolonged slumber that it becomes possible for the darkness within man to hold sway over the higher aspects of himself. A time when the coldest and darkest of human beings gain access to sacred knowledge not earned by their own volition, and indeed weaponize such knowledge for their own advantage. We find ourselves today in the latter culminations of such a time, for a long slumbering humanity has slowly allowed the darker hearts within man to organize and gain dominion over a dim-witted and inflated human populace. Yet the tides of power are forever in flux, and now is also a time when a new morning's light begins to peak the horizon, as older forces return and bravely attempt to rouse a sleeping world from within. This restoration of universal balance is inevitable. It is how such will happen that remains to be seen. Many times before have the mighty dark civilizations of our past been swiftly erased from the surface of this planet through cataclysmic upheavals of intense trauma and pain, just as many times as man has chosen to disavow the higher will within himself and refuse to face his own darkness. Human beings are indeed the sacred custodians of this world, and will continue to share a cooperative role alongside the laws of nature in the ongoing drama of planet Earth's living story. If man should refuse yet again to summon his own divine volition, and fail to rid himself of that which so obviously plagues him, then it is certain that the immutable laws of nature will quite unpleasantly cleanse the planet's surface of current human progress, and begin these elementary lessons in spiritual ascendancy once again. Indeed, now is the critical time when man must rise and reclaim what is rightfully his, for the predatory rulership have now implemented a monstrous system that supremely facilitates the perverted, carnal desires of their diseased consciousness, in a psychopathic infection that now spreads through all facets of society and threatens to stifle the last remnants of divine freedom within human beings. Primed for the Illuminist Sorcerer, as well as the Breakaway Technocrat, today's world bears witness to a golden age of psychopathy. When exploring such a dark reality, it is essential to maintain a balanced, holistic perspective. Strong intellect, intuition, and volition are all required in equal measure, for careless ventures into the labyrinthine depths of shadow can fast become disorienting and disempowering. Mapping negative polarity and illuminating shadow are nonetheless essential enterprises of the ascendant human journey, for it is through one's contact with the extreme polarities of contemporary earthly living that helps to inspire the evolution of human consciousness. In our world, emanations of beauty, purity, and love curiously exist alongside the darker, more fractured forms of pain, inauthenticity, and indeed wickedness. Both extremes are here to be witnessed and experienced through a direct, living contact. In so long as a state of personal impeccability is maintained, it is through our coming to know the relationship between light and shadow that we gain a more comprehensive perspective and ultimately attain a more powerful way of being. And so, it is in the spirit of harmony and balance that we turn our attention to a world largely suffering from an absence of such holistic virtues. Part 2. Holistic Assessment of Society. Human beings are not ignorant or unremarkable by nature. Our current state of profound unconsciousness is the result of intrusive conditioning steadily waged against us over many successive generations. A predatory ruling class have largely been successful in disempowering humanity by tactfully assaulting the interdependent faculties of man's awareness, causing intellectual and emotional disharmony and undermining willpower in order to more easily manipulate humanity's collective behavior. By leveraging occulted knowledge regarding the workings of human consciousness, these predators have skillfully debased the collective vibratory frequency of man's consciousness, decreasing such consciousness to a level that likely represents an all-time low. Previously in tune with higher aspects of subtle awareness, modern man now resides almost exclusively in the base awareness of five-sense reality, a reality disconnected from the higher knowings and inner passions of consciousness in its naturally evolving state. Before we can further assess the mechanisms of control responsible for the current unconscious state of humanity and the diseased predatory psyches behind its implementation, we must break any remaining conditioning within ourselves and raise our consciousness to a heightened state of awareness, an awareness capable of perceiving beyond the limited scope of consensus entrancement with a sober, penetrating discernment. The assorted faculties of one's conscious awareness must be identified and harmoniously exercised in an optimum working order. Such faculties are thought, emotion, and willpower, three primal aspects of being that comprise the principal pillars of consciousness. As a person's thoughts and emotions are brought into a state of accord, and not into the states of conflict or detachment that have sadly came to embody the human norm, it is through the harmonious unity of such thinking and feeling that one can then truly exercise their individual will. In this way, and only in this way, can meaningful action take place and real healing change be effected in this world. This threefold equation of thinking, feeling, and willfully acting forms a trivium that, when genuinely applied to the art of being, transforms the mere concept of such into a valuable gnosis. For gnosis is a living knowledge that presents itself through direct, participatory contact. Indeed, the active use of such experiential wisdom helps activate higher forms of individual conscious awareness and builds a holistic intelligence that aligns personal perception with authentic reality, burning away the fog of the chaotic modern world and allowing truth to be readily ascertained and integrated into an evolving philosophy of being. Holistic intelligence grants a razor-sharp acuity with which to see the world that casts aside the veil of consensus misperception, allowing the light of true awakening to enter one's life, a light that casts few shadows, for it allows the individual to perceive from a balanced array of the most authentic vantage points. In turning our holistic vision to modern society, it becomes quite absurdly obvious that corruptions of consciousness are epidemic in a climate of social predation. Sadly, such corruption exists within the vast majority of individual psyches, allowing this predation to more easily occur and gain momentum through time. The dysfunction seen in human consciousness takes many forms, manifesting in a variety of ways. Yet at root, such dysfunction can most always be linked to disharmony between thoughts, emotions, and willpower. The crucial interplay between these facets of being affects the quality of social conduct among individuals, which in turn translates into the greater societal narrative. An honest evaluation of today's collective narrative reveals the presence of a predatory ruling class that works to dominate and exploit the remainder of mass humanity. This predatory class exists high atop a pyramidal control system that can be described as a hierarchy of 7 distinct levels. At the bottom, base level of the pyramid are the ebulic masses, representing the overwhelming majority of society, generating both physical and non-physical resources for the uppermost levels of the pyramid. At level 2 are the enforcers, the rank-and-file members of the police, military, and private security organizations. They unquestioningly enforce the laws, policies, and procedures of the system through weapon-backed acts of violence and duress waged upon the public at large. Level 3 is the political level. This level serves as an artificial facade of predominantly communist and capitalist governmental regimes, obscuring the actual maneuverings and real policies made behind the scenes. The political level is the theater of government. Moving upward to level 4, we reach the level of realpolitik, from the German real, meaning realistic, practical, or actual, and politik, or politics. Realpolitik is political action based in power, resource, and practicality, rather than ethics or morality. Above realpolitik resides level 5, the level of parapolitics. Power politics carried out exclusively in a covertly unaccountable manner, with an emphasis on force, collusion, and deception. Included here are the upper echelons of the elite political, economic, and intelligence organizations, the global think tanks, and the highest elements of the black technocracy. Although light years removed from the 5-sense conception of modern man, at level 6 resides an ancient and unbroken genetic lineage of practicing dark occultists, who work to subvert the natural evolution of man's consciousness by way of the acute stratification of knowledge and technology throughout all lower levels of the pyramid, doing so ultimately to harvest low vibrational human consciousness for the purposes of Illuminism, a spirituality characterized by a synthesis of ancient mystery, tradition, and ritual, numerology, lunar, solar, and Saturnian symbolism, and communion with negative ultra-terrestrial consciousness. Through meticulous interbreeding, the Illuminists of level 6 have encouraged specific DNA characteristics to arise within members of the rulership, including the predatory consciousness that informs the dominant subject matter of this presentation. Such an initially bizarre-seeming reality further reaffirms the importance of utilizing all faculties of conscious awareness at our disposal, for such information radically challenges what use of solely the intellect would permit, instead requiring a firmly established uplink to the intuitive realm and a strong rooting in the will to proceed without loss of bearing. It is in the tenor of such awareness that we proceed with care and vigilance to the pyramid's apex. Astonishingly, level 7 is represented by malevolent ultra-terrestrial consciousness, a dark, preternatural intelligence involving prehistoric, galactic, and extra-dimensional elements, non-human predators that have long communed with the Illuminist sorcerers of the ruling class in the ongoing subjugation of humanity. There is much more to explore here within the extraordinary dynamics of this ultra-terrestrial presence, particularly in its ancient and ongoing communion with the occult rulership. But for the moment, let us set aside any non-human elements in our further examination of the predation inherent to modern society.